Top Med Talk.
Well, hello and welcome to Top Med Talk here at Anesthesiology 2025. It's the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. Now, I'm Desiree Chappell. I'm your host, and I'm joined by a very distinguished guest list here. Mike, right?
Really?
Yes, it's true. So I'm co-editor-in-chief for Top Med Talk, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, or one of my partners in crime, co-editor-in-chief, Professor Mike Grocott. I almost called you Monty.
No. Good morning, Desiree. It is lovely to be here. There was a tide of people came into the exhibition hall at 9:30. I mean, the real enthusiasm and excitement in the air.
It's great. Well, another one of our partners in Top Men Talk who joins us occasionally, we have Professor Emeritus and just cool guy all around.
Like that.
Saul Aronson.
Hello. It's so good to be here.
And actually one of our guest anchors filling in, I think, for Saul a couple times and just join us. But here today to have some other discussions, Professor Guy Ludbrook. Guy, thanks for coming back and hanging. I guess it was okay the last time you were here with us.
Hey, look, it's terrific to be back. And look, I'm now terribly familiar with the cameras.
Yeah. So Guy was at the premiere for Tron and got to walk the red carpet. And when I saw some picture, it was pretty outstanding.
And have we heard about it?
And you'll be hearing about it for a while.
That's extremely cool. You should be sharing that over and over.
It was seriously, it was just a one-off. It was,
once in a lifetime kind of bucket list thing, probably.
It was, yeah.
So here at Anesthesiology 2025, we're having phenomenal conversations with leaders in our space of anesthesiology, key opinion leaders, the presenters who are here within the Congress, and as well as hearing about cutting edge research and lots of projects that are going on related to perioperative medicine. Now, we're here in San Antonio, Texas, which is amazing and gorgeous and beautiful. I do have to say we spent most of our time indoors because adjacent to the meeting, we also have been running one of our POQIs, our Perioperative Quality Initiatives. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? We talked a lot about it on Top Med Talk, but for those who may not understand.
We've talked about different POQI meetings over the years, but I guess just for a refresh for everyone, POQI is the Perioperative Quality Initiative. It's a not-for-profit, a 501(c) incorporated over here in the US. Its sole focus is undertaking and publishing international expert consensus conferences. So we bring together multidisciplinary groups to address particular questions. We touched on things like hemodynamics, pain, postoperative cognitive dysfunction, postoperative renal impairment, all sorts of different things. And this time we've had a couple of days before the main ASA meeting in San Antonio looking at a thing that we didn't have a proper name for when we started.
Yeah, look, it was a great day and a half. I mean, it's interesting. Around the world, people have been talking about this thing, which is about the POQI or recovery room and taking that further, longer and higher to really tackle these early risks of complications, but also start that proactive journey towards healing. So it exists in pockets in different places. So it was a great opportunity to get people together from those pockets in a room to try and better understand what is the thing we're talking about. There was a great discussion on that and eventually on what is a title or a name that we can use more broadly to describe the various things that we do, which have a great deal in common.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
We settled on...
Drum roll, please.
Yeah.
Yes. We settled on EPOCH. So it was a great deal of discussion, but enhanced, because we understand enhanced. Postoperative, we understand that. Care, we understand. Slip an O in there as well to make EPOCH. And then we added EPOCH units because it was clear that we didn't want this to be confused with, say, enhanced care on a ward. We wanted this to be seen as the thing that it is and is becoming, which is a discrete cluster of patients getting quite specific care. So EPOCH unit is something that rolls off the tongue. It has words in it that we understand. And I think we landed pretty well, don't you, Mike?
I think it was good, but it's probably worth... So why is this different from ward care or intensive care?
So
or prolonged POQI care.
Yep. We know that your physiology early after surgery is still perturbed. There are whole issues with fluid balance, with pain relief, respiratory function, renal function, and so on. and the sequelae of having your cardiovascular system in particular not in great shape, the consequences in terms of kidneys, bowel, and so on is a big deal. So that's something that doesn't just stop at 2 hours, but continues through as we're increasingly seeing for 12, 18, 24 hours. So getting that physiology back to a really good state is one focus, because for many patients, what we call medium risk patients, a couple of hours in the PACU is very often not going to cut it. So there's that part. And then there's bringing in the ERAS type bundle. So the things that we know enhance recovery. So that is eating, drinking, mobilizing. But they're kind of related because you can't get up and walk if you're in pain, if you've got postural hypotension and so on. So the two are separate and they're also the same. But it takes a while. And I think we agreed that usually the goals would be to have patients having this for up to 24 hours, not precluding staying for 48 hours and on occasion 72 hours.
Let me ask something really quickly. So, Guy, on Topman Talk, we've talked to you about some of the early work that you've done in this space. And it all started with the pandemic of post-op morbidity or mortality. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with this idea, kind of your journey a little bit on this?
Well, I stole it, So Mike,
It was the best way.
so Mike Schwartner's group published a paper in 2017 saying we didn't have room in our high dependency unit, which is not always a word that translates internationally. So we sent some of our colorectal patients to the ward, and this is what happened. And what happened was bad in terms of complications and in terms of hospital utilization. So that's where we kind of looked at it and said, is there something in that we could actually proactively do rather than sort of fail to achieve? And we started to play in that space. And then in parallel, of course, COVID, if you like, was a driver for a lot of this because high acuity units were full of patients who are desperately in need of respiratory care in particular, leaving a bit of a gap for postoperative patients.
Although we did have that slightly strange phenomenon of coming to your meeting, which was about the pandemic of postoperative complications. And I left England. And by the time I got back to England from your pandemic meeting, we had a real pandemic of COVID.
Yeah, and that hidden pandemic was an important one. We had a series of meetings around that to understand what's going on. So it is a pandemic. It is universal. And if you look for it, you find this in medium risk patients, and hidden because it's not talked about a lot. So that's where it kind of grew. And then as soon as you go to look for it, you find it. So if you, instead of putting a patient on the ward and taking their blood pressure and pulse 4-hourly, actually sit across from them, you see all sorts of stuff that you didn't. So that was the kind of hidden pandemic. And then this was one mechanism to try and address that.
So there's a lot of names for this. You came to settle on EPOCH, good for you, unit. But, things like step-down unit or some lesser intensive care unit where you have that both resource to provide that intensity of observation that is more over than what you would get in a ward, and or the constraints of either need for invasive monitoring or infusion that is not quite to the level of those precious beds that we have to reserve in the intensive care unit, but yet moreover than what would be acceptable on a ward. So that's the niche. How do you build that?
It depends. I think first thing is recognize there is a problem. Yeah, the hidden pandemic is still pretty hidden. So
especially for our world of anesthesiology, where we don't see our patients afterwards per se, if you're not working in a critical care unit.
It's hidden from us, and I think often hidden from stakeholders such as payers and providers as well, in that sense of the C-suite or whatever. So the first thing that was helpful for us to say, yes, there is a problem. So that's fine. How might you deal with it? And we made it up on the spot. I'd like to believe it was a carefully planned, strategic. It evolved.
Project managed from every little detail.
It evolved to become a very structured process, but it evolved and we used other ideas and so on. That was very helpful. So one of the challenges is how can we help this happen? So we've set up a network which has been called the ARC network, but we're going to have to rechristen it now because Advanced Recovery Room Care was one place in Adelaide. I think the EPOCH network would be a very appropriate title. And that has a number of things in it, and it is growing, but includes things like a toolkit, which helps people to at least understand what's possible, understand what might be needed, and also information on what the impact might be for the C-suite. And so and it becomes a group where people can get together and discuss not only implementation, but growth in terms of size, but also in terms of quality.
I must confess, when you told me the name that you came to rest on was EPOCH units, I actually thought unit was a unit of measurement, a metric to have gradation of the, if you will, intensity of this patient that is in that narrow swim lane that we're describing here. It would be cool if we could do that and actually have gradations of EPOCH units that would constitute something meaningful in a quantitative way. Also, it's resource intensive and cost is always limitation. What do you believe would be the role of implementing technologies that can help us with a broader breadth and reach to actually perform this necessary care deliverable?
So I think the growth in monitoring technology in particular is we're just seeing that take off. We are heavily reliant on our nursing team run by Karina, which is terrific. And they are very well trained and have roles in not just monitoring, but managing as well. But as electronic monitors grow, I think there's huge opportunity for that to happen much more readily, so that rather than have to rely on personnel and skilled personnel, we can devolve some of that to technology. And I think that's going to be really important. The diagnostics of the cardiovascular system in my world, which is about 2/3 to 3/4 of what we do, is getting blood pressure and fluid spot on. And things to help us with that are growing. I think going to be absolutely essential. And in time, will that help with things like staffing ratios and make our costs more modest? I think it probably will.
So I'm interested to come back to one of Sol's comments, because one of the points we got to was we started from this is between the ward and intensive care. But actually much of it is parallel to, if you like, the less intense part of intensive care. So if you're deteriorating towards multiple organ failure, or you have fully established multiple organ failure, that's an intensive care job, critical care job. But there's a whole swathe of patients on intensive care unit who have a similar acuity to the patients in an EPOCH type unit. But the philosophy is completely different, and they tend to get neglected on intensive care units, and it's really hard to implement enhanced recovery, the drinking, eating, mobilizing elements. So I actually think it's not purely an in-between things. It just sits in parallel thing to intensive care.
Yeah. But I do feel like one of the big takeaways for me during this meeting is that it could look very different in the institution, and you have to use a model like this to make it work for you. That's what we talked a lot about, how it would be in parallel or a different kind of definition of more critical care. For us, we're starting a SPARC, so a spine arc unit, and we'll probably stick with SPARC. It's really catchy.
Right.
The way we look at it is we're focusing our stage spine procedures, and they all go to a ward with a higher intensity already, so 1:4, 1:5 nursing ratio, but they pretty much get monitoring every 6 to 8 hours. Maybe a blood pressure here and there if they are feeling a little woozy. But what we decided to do, instead of kicking it up to the critical care area, we're infusing it within our ward pod so that we have higher trained nurses. And so we have a major lack of critical care nurses, but we have ward nurses that we could staff up. And so we're upskilling them and teaching them, bringing them into kind of that medium step down unit care. And we're utilizing advanced monitoring and continuous monitoring through a very protocolized approach for them to be able to identify when the patients are starting to need more optimization. And if they require stabilization, that's a ticket to the ICU.
So what I'm hearing here, wouldn't it be cool, I submit, that there is a gradation that we can determine rather than an on-off ward ICU, not sick, that we score, if you will, an EPOCH 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to lead to the degree of nursing care, the degree of monitoring, if you will, or assessing our patients' hemodynamics, and that there is something in between an on and an off switch. Wouldn't that be neat? Because it does give us more alignment to resource limitations while maintaining safe care.
And I think
Submit that for your next POQI.
Yeah. So we're at stage 1, where we've got a name. That's great.
Right.
And I think we've defined a floor and a ceiling in terms of capacity, for want of a better word. That will be different in different institutions. It will be different, delivered in different ways and locations in different institutions. And maybe in time that kind of grades up and down. So I think we're at the first stage. It goes from here to here. This is what the principles of what it can do. And then in time, it may well be that it changes. I mean, we are kind of stuck on the weekends at home.
Right.
So we're thinking of bringing in a level 2 ARC, which is an EPOCH now, which will be without anesthesiology staff in it, but the same staff, nursing staff, with us continuing on. And we're going to measure that carefully to see what happens, so that just on Sundays when there's no one there, we have a different level. So we'll try that, we'll measure that and see whether a level 2 ARC is effective, and if so, in what ways.
It'll be interesting to compare some data on that too, because that's a lot.
Yep.
So we should probably start to wrap up, but it's worth touching on where the plans are next, because there's a clear runway of fleshing this out, doesn't there?
Indeed. We've got an opinion from some countries, and the plan is in the World Congress of Anesthesiology in Marrakesh in April, to get perspectives of other countries, low and middle income countries in particular, really to take those two, to put them together to the first World Congress in EPOCH now, is it?
Yeah.
In London, in parallel with EPBOM in July next year, to really take what we think is, as much as we can get, an international view on what this is. That's very exciting. And then to see what's the evidence for and against in terms of outcome and cost. And then ultimately, in a date yet to be determined, to look at where is the future in terms of what should we be doing and what should we be measuring. Yeah.
Got to emphasise that date stamp, 7th, 8th, 9th of July in London at the British Library. So the EPOM World Congress alongside the first World Congress of EPOCH, I guess, or postoperative care, or whatever it will be called. But a great opportunity to come to London and get some great education, meet some like-minded people.
Absolutely. Well, you can find all that at ebpom.org, specifically the EBPOM meeting in London and World Congress next year. So do check that out. Gentlemen, wonderful as usual. Thank you so much for joining us here on Top Med Talk. You can find us at topmedtalk.com. You can find us on YouTube, your favorite podcatcher. You can listen there. Please do, if you happen upon us or you are listening, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating. Let us know what you think about the podcast, any topics that you'd be interested in. We love hearing from you, for sure. Be sure to check us out. Check out the other pods that we're doing here at Anesthesiology 2025. Before we go, we do have to thank the ASA, or the American Society of Anesthesiologists. Thank you so much for giving us this beautiful booth space, the opportunity to do Top Med Talk here at the meeting. We also want to thank our sponsors. Our founding sponsor, BD APM, or Advanced Patient Monitoring, formerly known as Edwards Life Sciences, as well as GE Healthcare. We can't do it without you. We can't make Top Med Talk free and open to the world without that support. So thanks, everybody, and thanks for listening. Cheers.
Hey, Top Med Talk. Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and, of course, on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Also, it's important to remember that Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is epom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. epom.org.